Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the IAAC lecture series. I'm Guillem Camperdon, Fab Lab Barcelona Director and your host today here, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to Guto Requena. Guto Requena was born in Sorocaba in São Paulo state in 1971. He's an architect with a master in architecture and urban planning from USP, the University of São Paulo. And for 9 years, he has a researcher at the NOMAD USP, the Center for Interactive Living Studies of the University of São Paulo. And in 2007, he presented his master dissertation, Hybrid Habitation, Interactivity and Experience in the Cyberculture Era. In 2008, Guto founded the Estudio Guto Requena. Since then, he has won several awards and lectured and exhibited in more than 20 countries worldwide. Between 2012 and 2015, Guto wrote a column about design, architecture, and urbanism at the Folha de São Paulo, one of the major Brazilian newspapers, and collaborated as well with several magazines. Since 2011, Guto has been creating a screenwriting and hosting TV, web, and cinema series. And in 2022, Guto will launch his series for Netflix. So it's a pleasure for us to have him here today to talk about empathy, design, and technology, projects and research by his studio, Estudio Guto Requena. The lecture will be split in two. In the first part, Guto will present fundamental concepts of Estudio Guto Requena research development in the last decade. And then we'll have a second part of the lecture that Guto will present his recent production of projects focusing on experiences that seek to unite affectivity, design, and technology in different scales that the studio develops, such as objects, products, interiors, architectures, and urban installation. So Guto, thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to host you today, and the stage is yours.
Hello, Guilherme. Thank you very much for the introduction. A small correction. I'm from 79, not 72. So I'm a little younger. I'm 42 now. Hello, everyone. I'm Guto. I would love to be there in Barcelona with you all for a presential lecture, but it was not possible this time. So let's manage online. So I'm talking from São Paulo. I don't know how many of you know Brazil and know São Paulo, but of course it's a very different urban reality, social reality, and of course it generates different kinds of architecture. We just passed through, we're still passing through a very challenging moment in Brazil, of course, as much as in all the European countries and all the rest of the world. But I would say that especially Brazil has been deeply affected for COVID. So we were a country with already huge social distance between rich and poor people, and of course it increased now with the pandemic. And plus we have this horrible president that is working hard in our self-esteem. So I just want to introduce this a little bit because I think it's going to make more sense once I introduce you my experiments and my research. So let's share my screen share with you guys. Okay. So I'm really excited to be talking to you. I would love to see all the faces, but even now that I'm sharing, I don't see anyone. So I wanna go for the next minutes with you guys to share a little bit of the research and the architecture we've been developing in the studio. I think what connects most of our projects is this idea, or this almost an obsession to combine empathy and technology. So of course we all know that technology, for many years, many people thought that technology was supposed to erase the humankind, or it was supposed to make us apart. But instead, there are many possibilities of using technology in our favor, right? To connect us, to arm us as a civilization. So in the studio, we've been investigating many possibilities of designing what I like to call this hybrid architecture. So for us, architecture is no longer made only by the concrete physicality of it, so bricks, concrete, walls and so on. But we are trying more and more in the past years to add this digital layer into the architecture to create this hybrid architecture. So for us, we've been investigating a lot how to combine inside the bricks, microcontrollers, Arduino, LED lights, all this many kilometers of cables that we have to use when you want to create an interactive architecture. So it doesn't matter the size. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna go through different scales in the studio. It doesn't matter the scale of the project. We are very much passionate about investigating these new possibilities of how design, how architecture, how urbanism added with new interactive and digital technologies can invite us to look to each other's eyes, can invite us to smile, can invite us to be a more empathetic civilization. So this is the studio. We are in around 40 people, quite diverse studio. I'm very excited and very proud of the team. And I'm the creative director, but of course the projects, many of the people on the team helped to develop. So it's very important to highlight. I mean, the studio carries my name, but it's not only me designing it. The studio divides itself in 4 units of project. So we have architecture, where we do interior architecture and recently urbanism. We are finally developing our first big project in urbanism. Then we have the second unit, which is product design. So we've been investigating lamps, furniture, urban furniture, tapestry, and so on. We have the third unit, which is communication. This is where we develop the series for TV, books, consultancy, podcast, and so on. And finally, and the newest one, which I'm very excited, it's called Juntos, which means together in a genderless way to say in Portuguese. And Juntos is the laboratory for empathy, design, and technology. So since I was in the university, it was a dream to have inside the studio a laboratory where you could experiment with digital technologies like 3D printers, CNC cutting machine, and all the amazing and incredible possible technologies that it ends helping us in the process of doing architecture and doing interaction design. So now among the architects, and this changed completely the atmosphere in the studio. So among all the architects, we now have computer scientists, programmers, digital artists. So this is bringing a new fresh air to the studio and some very new interesting projects. So I just want to start inviting all to think about our own projects. I remember while back in the university, my professors, they taught me how to design architecture, how to create an architecture, thinking about the fluxus, thinking about the materiality, bringing interesting concepts, thinking about the time and the country we live in, and the architecture should be the result of all of it. But I never had a professor that instigated me to think how my projects could provoke or could stimulate empathy. So I think more than ever, we are living in this era of hating, and we all know what I'm talking about. So this is just a question that I would like to provoke you to think. Every time you're designing a new building, a new architecture, even a new project or a urban design, how our project gesture, how the shape of it, how the light of it, how can we provoke our projects to stimulate empathy? And the same way, how can we more and more stimulate and provoke the collective? So since I'm in Brazil, I don't know how many of you know the urban situation, but it's quite a country that in the past 5 decades, the industry of fear made us believe that if you want to be happy living in Brazil, you would aim to live in a closed and safe condominium, or you must save money to have a bulletproof car, or if you want to have fun, you must go to shopping malls. And of course, the more we denied the city, the more the city became a dangerous and a violent place. So in the past 15 years, there is this incredible urban movement that is happening not only in Brazil, but in the entire South America, and of course in many other countries, but especially in South America and especially in Brazil, that people are trying to reoccupy public spaces. So there is a new phenomenon of reinventing the city, occupying the city, using the streets. So this is a notion that probably most of you as Europeans already have in your DNA, because this is how you probably learned to live in most of the European cities. I know it's easy and chill and quite safe to be in the streets, but not in Brazil. So the question here in Brazil makes sense. How can we stimulate an architecture that invites the collective to be together? So in opposition of, for example, developing huge walls, denying the city, denying the pedestrian walk, what if we open these walls? So there is very interesting movements going on right now. I'll give you an example. São Paulo, from what I researched, São Paulo is the city that before the pandemic was developing the biggest number of crowdfunding urban projects. So collectively getting money to develop parties or cultural things in the street or occupying the street. So it was a phenomenon. So many people participating in crowdfundings to occupy the city. And that's how I also bring another question, which is, again, in Brazil and South America, Brazil is a super racist country. 58% of the population in Brazil is non-white. Most of it is Black. But of course, in all the power places you visit, and in the majority of the architecture companies in Brazil, unfortunately, most of it's going to be white people. So it's changing. We have a big new generation of Black architects in São Paulo and in Brazil in general. Another number that I'm going to talk a little bit more further is that Brazil is the country that kills the biggest number of LGBTQ community in the world. this gives you a sense of somehow violence and all the issues that comes together. So how can our projects, especially urban projects, urbanism, and of course design, could empower these people to occupy places they were not able to occupy before? How can we empower the citizens to come more to the streets? So these are three words that I think we've been more and more thinking in our projects and trying to spread between our students and talking with other architects. So enough questions. I'm gonna show you. I don't have the answers, unfortunately, but I can say that we've been experimenting, as I said, in different scales and with technology to come up with some ideas and some experiments. So the Light Creature is a project from 2014. It's a quite old project. Let me just 2014. So again, so this is São Paulo skyline. São Paulo is not properly a beautiful city. It's not like Rio de Janeiro. If you've been to Rio de Janeiro, the moment your flight arrives, you get fascinated by the beauty of the forest, the jungle, the mountains, all the natural landscape. São Paulo is about this built man-made landscape, and most of its architecture, it's awful, guys. It's really bad. So I would say that 90% of the architecture is really ugly in São Paulo. Well, it's not sustainable to destroy this architecture, of course. It's not sustainable to rebuild from scratch this entire city. So we've been investigating these notions of hacking architecture. How can we use strategies in design, in architecture, to reshape the notion of architecture, impacting in its neighborhood, giving a social impact, and making the buildings more beautiful. So what if hacking this existing architecture with green gardens, public art, technology? So there are many new possibilities of hacking this architecture. And I think this is a very interesting way of rethinking architecture. So this was a building that was abandoned from the 60s, and it has to become a hotel. So they invited me to think about a facade. And I'm very curious about, you're gonna see in the next projects as well, I'm very curious to investigate how music, how soundscapes can impact in the way we do architecture. So parametric design is a tool. It's a way that we've been doing architecture in the studio. I think that less and less we use the pen to design something, and more we grow shapes using algorithms and using parametric architecture. So we use an algorithm that analyzes the soundscape of this street, in front of the street. So we used a recorder to record 24 hours of the sounds in the street. It's quite a noisy street, and this resulted in that previous images that was playing here at the video. So it's like a camouflage, bluish, white, and green that it envelopes this new building. But what is interesting about this architecture is that we used this facade as a media facade. Again, I think media facades are a very important and very intriguing tool that us as architects should use it, or could use it, especially in a place like São Paulo, because it's the most democratic way of giving information. Of course, much more than TV, for example. The building is there, so everybody can watch it, everybody can see it. So the idea here was developing this art installation called Light Creature. So it's like a light creature. It's like a creature that inhabits this facade at night, and the behavior of the creature changes according to the air quality and to the soundscape. So the better the weather, the greenish this creature gets, the worse the weather, the reddish it gets. So we know São Paulo is a very polluted city. Everybody knows that, but we shouldn't be comfortable with this information. So what if a huge 30 floors building in the middle of your path, in the middle of your way back home, reveals to you every day that the city pollution is really bad. So it's angry. So the light creature gets angry, gets red. In opposition, in Sundays, for example, there is less cars in the city. This is the day people bike. This is the day the air gets a better quality. So when you pass in front of this building, you see the creature getting green. So it's an information that somehow in a more ludic, in a more intriguing, in a more fun way, reveals this reality, this urban reality. And then we installed a group of microphones, 8 microphones around the building that detects the movement. So the bigger movement, it means that it's more noisy. So the calmer is the creature, the less movement it has. And then we developed this app that allows anyone to play with. So it's been many years now, and it's been everywhere, published this building, and it's still somehow a success because people got a little proud of this building. So people are proud to say, you know, that building, it's changing its color because of the weather. And it started a movement during the elections. It was fun because a group of students from one university fought with another group of students. So it was right against left part during the elections. And they were playing with colors in the facade. So they were literally, they somehow they made a gamification of the urban scene through the building. So they were trying to see how longer the colors of their part, left or right, was playing the facade. So this is the thing that I never imagined that would help, that would happen, right? The hacking the facade was hacked by geeks, by students. So it ended up that I love it. So it shows the potential, again, of how can we look to the ugly buildings we have in the city, and how can we add these new layers of information, of technology, and why not poetry. So this is another project. This is called the Dancing Pavilion. And so the briefing for Dancing Pavilion was the best one. I love designing clubs. We are designing now our 10th club. It's going to be in Lisbon. I think club design it's amazing because when you go clubbing, this is a safe space. So clubbing, the history of clubs reveals that among minorities or among queer people or Black community, going to a club was a safe space. So inside a club is a place where you can be yourself, you can forget the problems for a couple of hours, you can dream. So it's an oniric architecture. So for the Olympic Park in 2016 in Rio, in Brazil, this big beer company that was the main sponsor of the Olympics, they invited me and they gave me white letter to do whatever I wanted to do, which was amazing. And I decided to, instead of doing a dark club with LED lights, I decided to create this super solar, super sunny club. So the best thing about Rio is the weather, it's the sun. So what if we create this club which literally captures the sunlight and brings it into the dance floor? So we created this very simple shape, which is made through I think almost 1,000 discos, and they rotate one by one, so we could control individually each one of them. And this is what I call the emotive architecture. So this is another research. So the first research I told you was hacking architecture. And now the second research we've been investigating is the emotive architecture, or how can we develop spaces and buildings and cities that somehow responds to how we feel, or collects our emotions to reshape itself. So what we did here, we used a couple of sensors in the club that collects how people are dancing and screaming and touching, and then the entire skin rotates, the entire skin reacts to it. So you saw in the end of the video, it was a huge success. Of course, there was beer inside, there was good music. So I would say that it's less about the architecture, much more about the beer and the music, but it ended up being a huge success. And so after that, it was a temporary architecture, right? So it stayed there for only 2 months. But now we are finally doing our permanent kinematic architecture that is going to be developed next year. It uses the same principle, but it's made with rectangles. And of course, it's much more challenging because it's supposed to be a permanent architecture. So this is the second thing I would like to invite everybody to think. How can our architecture, our design be emotional, right? These are notions that might appear very subjective, but I don't think it is. I think it's very objective. I think we do need strategies in the methodology that we do design and we do architecture to push the boundaries and to literally bring this emotion. So I hope some of the projects here inspires you to think about that. So this is a club we designed in Paris. It's called Plateforme 7. It's a beautiful view. It's the only club in Paris that you can dance and watching the Eiffel Tower. So it's a project from 2018. So again, using parametric design and algorithms, I came back to my childhood. So I'm the only kid and I was raised in a farm. And I remember laying down under the trees and drawing and just spending my time under the trees. So this was the place that I felt safe, that I felt secure. So for this club, I was inspired by these memories of my childhood of being under the trees. So conceptually, we planted 5 seeds in this dance floor, and we let grow 5 trees that connect to one another through the couple, and creates this rhizomatic grid. So it's a grid, so people are invited to dance inside this grid. And again, I think club is this place that you are able, or you are invited to forget your problems for a couple of hours. So how can we design these oniric spaces? How can we use digital technologies, and how kind of softwares we can use that connect music with lights? So we've been experimenting, we've been studying and investigating different softwares to create these light installations. So if you guys ever come to Paris, I would strongly recommend you to visit if you are into electronic music and into clubbing. It's been a huge success. It's quite impressive, this structure. It was all costume made, right? It was all especially produced. It's fascinating how we know how to have fun when we are together in this kind of atmosphere, right? I love these pictures. Okay, so changing scales, I want to show you now all the researching path that we are taking. So again, living in São Paulo can be dangerous, can be violent, but can be very fascinating, can be very interesting. It's literally a urban jungle, anything can happen. And what I miss the most in Brazilian cities, and of course in many other cities, is urban furniture, like a quality in urban furniture. I think somehow Brazilians are known for their architecture. We had incredible architects from the 50s and the 60s, like Oscar Niemeyer, Lina Bobardi, and Lucio Costa. But we don't have many people until now working in the public landscape and urban landscape and urban furniture. So I think there's a new generation coming to design and to create and to redesign the shape of our cities. And I'm myself very much instigated to research urban furniture and urban structures that, more than functional, they also work with digital layers in a way to add new poetic layers in the city. So this is how I see technology in the urban installations, in the urban space. I think technology is a very interesting way of adding new poetic layers. Again, inviting people to talk to each other, to smile. So for the mapped empathies, this is a prototype that I'm using here made the mock-up, made the prototype. Now it's ready to go to the street. So it's a parametric. It's the waffle parameters that we used to create, and it was all CNC cutted. So it's quite easy to produce and low cost. So it could be installed in quite easy and non-expensive way. So basically could be a bus station while you wait your bus, or could be a place to get some shadow in a square. And basically what happened is that once you're inside this temple-like architecture, there are 5 seats, so 5 people can sit. And once they touch their finger in the sensor, we collect their heartbeat, and some sound speakers let you listen your heartbeat and the heartbeat of the others. And then moment by moment, it generates a collective music. So I invited an artist, a musician, a Brazilian musician, to create this generative music that is live, that is created live, literally using the heartbeat of the visitors. So the result was a huge surprise. I was absolutely fascinated, and since then we've been investigating more projects like that. I saw people laughing to each other. I saw people crying. I saw people holding hands. I saw new friendship coming. And I love to think that this kind of public furniture, urban furniture, again, could stimulate somehow empathy. So it was in a museum. It was not in the street, but this is quite a very democratic museum. It's a cultural institution called SESC, and it's free to get in. You don't pay. So it's a very democratic atmosphere. So I think it was a good way to prototype and to see that it's possible, and how can we work more with this kind of projects. So in 2019, Intel and National Geographic invited me to document my creative process and my studio. And it generated this public art, which is called My Heart Beats Like Yours. There's a short video, hold on. So again, Brazil is the country that kills the biggest number of LGBTQ plus people. So for this installation, I decided to create this big hybrid between a sculpture and urban furniture, so you can see it. And I've been inviting LGBTQ plus activists in Brazil to narrate their personal stories, their personal life stories. And I also recorded their heartbeats while they were narrating the stories to me. So what happened is that once you sit in this sculpture, you can listen the voice of the activists narrating their personal stories, and you can literally feel their heartbeat, because we used special speakers that vibrates the entire sculpture. And since it's made by metal, it resonates in the entire sculpture. So you can listen to the stories, but you can feel their heartbeat, literally. And well, talking this kind of projects in a country where we have Bolsonaro, when we have a very homophobic atmosphere, it was quite something. So just to give you an example, when we finished this project and it was ready, 2 days after, it was totally destroyed. So people glued pictures of Bolsonaro. They destroyed everything. They wrote horrible things in the piece. But I was lucky because Intel gave the money to restore the piece. So we did restore the piece. We put some unfortunately private police to take care of the piece. But I think it became an incredible example of design as activism, right? So this is the thing I've been spending a lot of time reflecting. How are we using our creative energy? In which kind of projects are we using our creative energy? In a moment like now, in the era of hate, in a moment like now, which is with this climate emergency, this urgent climate emergency that is happening right now. I mean, which kind of projects are we investing our energy, our personal energy? So of course, it's unfortunately not possible yet to invest all the energy in the projects that I would love to, like this one. But more and more, we've been finding ways of getting sponsors and brands and municipalities that want to come up with projects and ideas like that. So it's been, I think there is a huge opportunity, and I know it's the same in Europe. There's a lot of opportunities to cross big brands, big companies, and public institutions to get the money and to get the support to develop this kind of ideas. New public furniture, new installations, and I think somehow it's this hybrid between art, design, and architecture that wakes us up. So this is the kind of art and architecture that I care the most right now. Is an architecture that opened my eyes, that made me think about some urgent problem. So I love these pictures because it shows somehow that is less about the piece I created, and it's more about the impact, the social impact that this piece has. When you pass in front of the piece and you see all these people gathering together, these people listening to the stories, these people laughing, kissing, this is the kind of design and architecture that I really think we should be doing it. So this project now, it's a concept that I've been trying to sell. So I'm looking for the money. Could be developed anywhere. I mean, of course, not only in Brazil, maybe in different places, but it's a memorial for COVID. COVID was devastated for all of us. It was devastated for Brazil. You probably saw the numbers of people we lost with death. It was awful. So I got the studio together and we developed this idea of creating this urban furniture or this urban art that invites you to reflect and invite you to sit for a minute, to stay calm, to stay quiet. And the idea is that anyone through their mobile or through their computer could go into the website and could create a homage to someone they lost. So we were inspired by the ideas and the metaphors with butterflies. So the idea is that you can go to the website and you can customize and create your butterfly, and you can make a little tweet with writing something about that person, and then you send it. So once you send your homage, your butterfly, this butterfly will inhabit the art piece forever. So this is a simulation. So you have this marble, this concrete piece, but then you also have this digital layer, which is this augmented reality that you can verify using your phone or maybe through augmented reality glasses. But the idea is that you can be seated there, you can play your homage to the people you lost. And then if you want, you can use your phone and you can watch the butterflies and you can touch them. And once you touch one of the butterflies, you can read the tweet and you can maybe know a little bit more of that person, because in the end, we are not numbers, right? It's not about the numbers. It's about who is each of these numbers, who is each one of these persons we lost. So I have this project. It's all detailed. I mean, it's done. I'm just looking for the money. So hopefully, maybe in the next time I'll be there physically in the IAAC, I can have new pictures of this project, hopefully. And another new project that we've been developing right now, it's called the Trauma Bench, Connecting Hearts. So it's a simple idea that I've been obsessed. Again, I've been using this word, but it's true. So some of the projects I'm not showing all of them, but we've been curious about using biofeedback sensors. So sensors that measure heartbeat or your brain activity, your sweat, your voice. So most of the sensors, most of this hardware comes from the medicine fields, but we use them and we hack this hardware sometimes, and we play with this hardware into the buildings, into the design. So the trauma is using, again, the heartbeat sensor, and again, this speaker that vibrates, that resonates, and also a microphone and a speaker. So basically, it's modular. So there are different shapes you can create with this bench. And then you have one module, one of them, that is this red color. And this is the interactive module. So basically, the idea is spreading these benches in different cities in Brazil, why not in the world? And you can sit here, and once you press with your finger the sensor, you can immediately send in real time your heartbeat to the other benches that are spread in different locations. And then the other people that are seated in the bench, they can literally feel your heartbeat in real time. And if they want, you press the other button, and you can open a communication, so you can talk to each other. So I'm amazed by the idea that maybe I would have one of these benches in historical downtown in São Paulo, and then I can have another one, I don't know, in Manaus, in the north of Brazil. And then one day we sit there, we exchange heartbeats, and I open the microphone, and people will like, okay, who are you? Where are you? Oh my God, you are in Manaus. How old are you? So what kind of communication, what kind of conversation we can have once you don't see the color scheme, once you don't see the age, once you don't see the clothes, once you don't see the gender. So I think it's, again, opening possibilities of new communications, of empathy, using public furniture, urban furniture. So it's also pitched. We also searching for the money, and this is supposed to happen in the next 2 or 3 months. So I hope for the next lecture I can also share with you how was this experience. And guys, I want to finish downsizing my scale. So I'm not showing projects of product design, but I'm going to show you a research that is going on for almost 10 years. It's called the Love Project. And the Love Project is the ultimate idea in my studio of wearing and using these biofeedback sensors. So basically the idea here is that I invite people to narrate the biggest love story of their lives. I leave this person alone in a room in privacy. I don't record, I don't listen to the story. The only thing I ask for is it's for them to narrate the biggest love story of their life. So it can be a story about the son, about the mother, or about a lover, even about a dog, it doesn't matter. It has to be a love story. And then I plug sensors in their body. So I have a sensor of voice that measures, and we develop this algorithm that helps us to understand the emotions through the voice. We also use this a mind wave sensor that collects some of the mind waves that reveals if we are tense, or if we are angry, or if you are relaxed, and so on. And then heartbeat again. So the idea is very simple. I ask these people to narrate a love story of their life, and I monitor how the body is giving emotions, right? We know that when we are in love, or when we are angry, or when we are really, 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 I don't know, sad, our body produces data. I shake my hands, I can cry, my voice changes, my brain activity changes. So I'm interested in using this data and applying them into the algorithms. So the idea of this investigation is to create daily objects, 3D printed daily objects. So the rules of the parameters are very simple. As an example of this, of 3D printing this vase. So the mind wave helps with the attraction and repulsion between the particles. We created this particle system. So basically what happens is that while you are narrating a love story, these particles, they start growing from above to the top. While you're narrating the stories, the behavior of this particle changes in real time. Once you finish your story, you have your final shape, and then it's 3D printed. So voice impacts in the particle acceleration, and heartbeat in the line thickness. So here we have different love stories generating different objects. And what I like about this idea is when we invite someone to narrate something that sometimes can be something painful, it's also a way of inviting people to heal. So it's like love stories to heal, or love stories that you can remember, and it's gonna be. 3D printing objects, it's also a way of thinking about sustainability in a different way. I like to think about affective sustainability. So for example, it's the birthday of your mother. Instead of buying her a little gift at the shop, what if you could narrate a love story that you remember, I don't know, a story that you remember from your childhood with your mother, and then you generate an object, a 3D printed object. For sure, the life cycle of this project is going to be much longer, because it's not only an object that you bought in the shop, but it's an object that was literally created through your emotions. And of course, now with the new advances of 3D printing and the filaments, what if you 3D print in a biodegradable filament? So this piece can take 100 years, but then one day, maybe if nobody wants it anymore, you can literally throw it into the ocean and it's biodegradable. So this is Laís, and her love story with her grandparents generated this vase. This is Dona Iraci. Her love story for her daughters generated this fruit bowl. And this is Felipe and his love story with his nephew, for his nephew, generated this lamp. So it was quite a very interesting investigation. In the past years, I've been listening to the most beautiful love stories. Again, I don't listen, but sometimes when people want, they tell me. This was a design performance that we did in São Paulo during São Paulo Design Week 2014. It was a very strong experiment, as I like to call. So basically, we opened the methodology of this project to the visitors. So in one room, anyone could go there and narrate a love story. We plug the sensors and we collect the data. But outside, people could watch the digital object being shaped. And then in the other space, there were a couple of 3D printers printing in real time the result. So it was a very didactic and ludic way of explaining back in 2014 to the population. It was an open exhibition, how 3D printers work, what is algorithms, what is parametric design, what is generative design, but above all, how can we invite people to narrate a love story? Well, it ended up that it was a huge surprise, became a very popular exhibition. There was a big line, a big queue to participate. And it was very, very, very emotional. So people cried, people told incredible stories, and we used a sensor that collects the heartbeat and it generates music in the gallery, in the museum. So once you were inside, you could listen the heartbeats, like tutu, tutu. And then if the person started to cry, you could monitor it from outside, and you could listen the heartbeat going faster, like tutu, tutu, tutu. Like this couple, for example, it was one of the most beautiful moments of my professional life. The couple waited for 5 hours in the line to participate. So I was intrigued by that. And I asked, well, thank you very much. You've been waiting for 5 hours. Tell me your story. And they said, well, we have a love story. We believe in love. We are married for almost 30 years now. We knew each other since the beginning of the university. We have three daughters. The 3 daughters are here with us. And we just want to participate. We want to see the shape of our love. So for this exhibition, we created these mandalas. So it was not a big object. It was a smaller object, which is easier to print. So this is the mandalas. And it was incredible to see the different shapes of the mandalas, right? Because it's generative design. It never repeats itself. So back to the couple, I was very emotional already. I was almost crying with the story and with all the atmosphere that was happening in the past days there. So I invited them. We did something different for the couple. The man looked to her and described his love to her. And we did the same with her. We plugged the sensors on her and she described her love to the husband. And in the end, we collapsed to generate a one mandala, like a single mandala, the same shape for both of them. So when they left the room, something incredible happened. I got really emotional when I remember that. So they left the room and the three daughters came and the five of them were like crying and holding. And then most of the majority of the people of the gallery get emotional and people were like crying and holding, and it was epic. So again, I think it's less about design, it's less about technology, but it's more how we find ways to invite people, in this case, to stop for a moment, to close their eyes, and to think what is important, right? To think about someone you care, about someone we love. So I'm just finishing with my last project, which is a commercial development from the previous one, from Love Project. So Love Project was a big success in the press. We got a lot of prizes and we won a lot of competitions and prizes, but we wanted to make something that was more affordable and it was more commercial. So easy to make some money to help us with the research. So we developed Aura Pendant. So Aura Pendant is an app anyone can download, even there in Europe. So you download and you narrate the big love story of your life. And the app collects the heartbeat. So you should touch the camera while you are describing your love story. So we will collect the heartbeat rate. And we also collect the emotions in the tone of your voice. So in the end of story, you just leave your finger, and in a couple of seconds, it will generate a unique mandala. Again, the mandala never repeats because the shape of it literally came from this biofeedback, from these inputs. And then we 3D print the mandala in gold or in silver. And then you can carry your love story close to your heart. I'm now wearing my mandala here. I have my own mandala. And this is when I proposed to my husband. So my mandala, of course, for me is very unique, it's very special because it contains the love story of me and my husband. And this is our ring. So this is what connects us. So both of us, we use the same mandala and we carry it close to the heart. So it's been an incredible journey this past 10 years with the new discoveries, with the new developments. I'm very fascinated about how digital technologies are, how hardware and how sensors are getting cheaper, are getting more sophisticated, and how much can we took from them to do architecture, to do design, to create installations, to create cities. And this is the Aura pendant. So this is 3D printed gold pendants, and you can see the difference. And it doesn't matter how many I do, they always come with a different shape. And I just want to end my talk inviting you to think again, what can we do and how can we do with technology and love? Because if we want to survive in the near future, for sure, the only way is through technology, but not only technology itself, but how we use this technology. And as creatives, as architects, as designers, I think it's in our hands. I mean, we have all this technology right now going on, but again, it's not about the technology itself, it's how we use it and how we can reshape the way we do and we think and we use the spaces, the city and architecture. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, Guto, for this lovely lecture. Now we'll open the questions and answers part of it, and I encourage everyone to type questions on the chat or directly start the questions yourself. I would like, in a way, just to warm up a bit the conversation, to say I value a lot everything you brought here about the roles technology has in society. makes me, you know, in a way, think about the work of Evgeny Morozov, which is kind of a tech critique or a tech intellectual that I like a lot. His writing when he says it's not enough to break up with big tech, that we need to imagine a better alternative, right? And I think nowadays there's this position where we see that technology is not always leading to the future that we wanted. Yet I think that what we need to react is not to avoid it, is to actually be creative and propose an alternative. That's the one that we want to, and that this one cannot only be led, right, by an approach to the small. We need, in a way, to embrace it collectively. So it's not about an individual change in the perception of technology, but a collective one, which also connects to me, which one of the things you said that for me was more interesting, which is when you talk about clubbing and clubbing culture, because sometimes I'm afraid designers, we don't know how to have fun, or we like to have fun after we work, but it looks like when we work, we cannot make fun of us, we cannot design spaces where it's not only about isolation and intellectualizing things. And I love that actually you wrote, you know, truly the idea of fun, the idea of making things together, not just, you know, as an intellectual reflection, but also as the idea of playing and using design and technology to enable it. So thank you very much. And I'd like to actually open the question to all of you. So I don't know if anyone would like to start. Remember, you can unmute yourself and turn on the camera so we see you live.
I would love to see some of the faces. So if it's possible, just open for 1 minute so I can scroll down here and I can see the faces of you guys. That will be so amazing. Hey, Oceans. Yuri, thank you. Gerald, Julia. So nice. I would love to give a hug and to say hello to each one of you. Martha, Rachel, Michael, Emily. Thank you so much for opening your camera. It warms my heart, really.
I do have a question for you, Guto, when you're ready. If you can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm ready, guys. This is Ocean's Live. Okay.
Wonderful.
Let me know your question.
Thank you for the lecture. Very, very cool. I loved it. Thank you for taking the time. My question is about your architecture projects. Clearly, your firm has a strong ideology behind the designs. And just like you were saying before, it's clearly about like fun and love and connection and people. And my background is in development. And you mentioned early on in the lecture, like, for example, a lot of the architecture in São Paulo is you said horrible, but it's often not the fault of architects, right? Architects want to create beautiful things, but there's all these constraints, financial constraints, policy constraints, and so on that developers face when trying to create new buildings. So I was just wondering if you could speak to like the mindset or the approach that the sponsors or developers that you've worked with have taken on these projects and how they've like approached thinking about executing on these designs in the real world in a way that also makes financial sense and also it can be executed with policy, and how does all this creative wonderfulness actually get built into the real world, and what has been the stance of those sponsors and developers you've worked with?
Thank you, Ocean. Well, this is the 1 million question. I mean, it's very challenging, of course. Well, I can tell you by my own experience. So, for example, the hacking architecture that I presented, the interactive facade in the hotel, the client didn't ask for an interactive facade. He asked me for a nice and beautiful facade. That's it. And then I started a long process of convince the client and convince the group that was an opportunity for them. And in the end, it's unfortunately, as we know, the world we live in, it's all about money. So in the end, I convinced them, showing to them that the amount of money that they were going to spend to create the interactive facade was bigger than they were expecting. But the organic marketing, the organic advertisement that they would get would be uncalculable. It would be huge. And it ended up that it was. So I give an example. If the building costed, if the interactive facade costed 1 million reais, in less than 1 year, they got 10 times of this money in free publicity. And this is an argument that it's quite a challenging argument, but I think it's an argument that I've tried to use sometimes with my clients, because you are absolutely right. In the end, it's about time, it's about money. Most of the constructors are not interested in architecture, especially in my country where architecture and design, it seemed to be something for rich people. But the best definition of design and architecture for me, it's solving problem. So we have a lot of problems, and design and architecture are major tools to help us solving these problems. So when a client approaches me, now I have a portfolio, right? So now I can exemplify my speech with some projects. So it got a little easier. And now the clients that comes to me, they a little bit know what to expect. But I think my answer is, I think we have to be a little bit professors with the clients. We have to be very patient. And most of the big constructor that when they approach us, of course, somehow they always say the same word. They want something different. They want something innovative. But then when we show them and they give the budget, it's very challenging. So in one hand, I think especially the past 3 years, we've been researching more and more how to develop architecture in a cheaper way. And when I mean cheaper way, I mean not so expensive, so we can create very interesting, as we know, architectures, but not spending much money. So I think it's a combination of being a very good professor with your client, so giving to the client more references, examples, other architects, other ideas, and then investigating more and more how to truly develop an architecture that's not going to be super expensive. And this is an issue because somehow we didn't know how to do it, especially when we are beginning, right? We don't know the price of the things. So I didn't show a project because it's still a private project. I can't show you now, but in a couple of months I'll be ready. But it's a huge headquarter that we are designing. We love designing office spaces as well. I designed the Google headquarters in São Paulo. We designed headquarters for many big tech companies in Brazil. And now we're developing this huge headquarters, 1 million kilometers of forest that they bought. So it's an area of preservation. So we had to create this super sustainable architecture. It's the first time I'm working with timber wood. So it's 75,000 square meters of architecture. It's for 6,000 people to work. It's divided in 5 main buildings, and it's all timber wood. And it's the first time we are working with algorithms. So one of the buildings is totally parametric, but it's CNC cutted in timber wood. So it's a very complex project, especially for Brazil. We never did something like this before. And this is, I think it's another example for your answer. I mean, the client didn't ask for that, but I tried to use all of my tools in the table to show them that if he has this incredible architecture, that first, it's gonna make all the employees happier. We are working with wood, it's sustainable. So there is the ESG now that help us as architects to convince the companies, right? If you have the ESG approach. And so I'm very curious to see how this big headquarters is going to end up. But I think it's a combination of all of this. It's very challenging, and I'm very upset. I'm very sad because I'll give you an example. I live in a neighborhood in São Paulo, not so far from my studio. And it's a neighborhood that is well known by its architecture, especially in the 50s and the 60s. There's this age of gold architecture in Brazil, the modernist architecture. So you walk around and you see these incredible examples of the best, the finest architecture you can find in Brazil. But now all the new buildings are absolutely horrendous. They're horrible. Of course, it makes me very impatient and very sad. I try to talk more and more. Now I'm beginning to design architecture. So I think the past 10 years we've been doing a smaller scale, and now finally we go to I think we ate a lot of rice and beans, and now we feel like we are ready to finally develop architecture. So now I'm understanding more and more the market. So it's a balance here. It's a balance between money, how much innovation you can give for the less time, and how fast and smart you can be with your client, because otherwise he goes to the easiest way, which is he wants to make more money and he wants to make it faster. So I think we have to learn a lot as well. And of course, in the end, it's not totally in our hands. It's in the hands of the investors, it's in the hands of the constructors. But I think the better we communicate with them, the more open we are, right? The more open to receive them, to talk to them, to be patient. I think it's the better.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Guto. I have a kind of a follow-up question to Ocean's question.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you very much for the lecture. It's very moving. I was curious about your projects that you develop in-house that you don't necessarily have financing for, but you create the concept and then kind of shop it around. Did this come from your frustration of working with clients and not being able to have as much control, and does that experience give you more control over the final outcome?
Thank you, Michael. Well, I think it's in part yes, and I think I'm still trying to find a business model of my business, because I get money from some clients and for some type of the projects, and I use this money to reinvest in my laboratory. So then I can investigate this hardware. I can spend the time of my team developing this more experimental architecture, and it's always a combination. So of course, no, I made a selection of the more interesting projects, but of course we also have very commercial projects that in the beginning I wanted to say no, but then I understood that it's okay to say yes because we need the money, and it's okay to say yes because then I can reinvest the money into the laboratory, into the experiments. So now I think it's a balance, but of course the more our portfolio is growing, especially with the international projects, the more people know what we do, and the more they find us to do more what we love to do. But it's been super challenging, and it's been this year especially, it's been super challenging. There's a huge economic crisis in Brazil, and I don't know where are the clients. I'm finding for them. I'm searching to find the clients. I have almost 40 people working here. Now we have less, but it's we are struggling. So I think all of architects that are here understands a little bit. So it's I think it's always a combination, Michael. And so yes, I think most of these projects that we've been developing that are more experimental is a refreshing way of not doing what the clients want. But it's nice because if we find this methodology in the architecture studios, it's nice because then you have these experiments to show the clients. So I can't give you guys a tour at the studio right now, but my studio occupies a historical monument in the city. It's a house from 1911, and it's all original. So all the tapestry, all the wallpapers, all the wood, everything is from 1911. So when my clients come here, they come expecting to go to an Apple store, very minimalistic, all white, since I work with technology. But when they arrive here, or they got disappointed, or they got very surprised, because to me, it's about these memories, about this history, this historical place. Of course, I added a lot of new technology in this house. And so, yes, I think this is an example of what we're trying to do. Not sure if I answered you well, but
Yes, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. I think Maria now has a question.
Yes, hello. First of all, thank you so much, Guto, for the lecture. I'm also Brazilian, so it was very, very nice to see a Brazilian person speaking here for IAAC. And I wanted to ask, it was super nice to see landscapes of São Paulo and other cities in Brazil in your presentation. I wanted to ask you more about specifically the Brazilian scenario. So I come from Curitiba. We do not have that much of funding or maybe even interest in developing this kind of projects, but I really do feel there is a space in there for that. My question is more related to, did you, like in the beginning of your career, had to like crave the space, or there were already opportunities there? And if you think that maybe other cities also could possibly in the near future embrace more technological or I don't know, future in architecture.
Very nice, Maria. Thank you for, good to see a Brazilian too. So I think I'm the first, we are the first, well, I'm older, so I'm the first blog generation. And I like to say that because I think it all started back in 2011 somehow, this is when I developed my first 2 interactive projects. So one was for SESC, this cultural institution that I was telling here. And the other one was a chair. So I created a chair called the Noisy Chair. So I 3D scanned a very iconic piece from Brazilian design from Lina Bobardi from the 70s. And then I walked in the streets of São Paulo historical downtown, collecting the soundscapes, collecting the noise. And then what I did, I collapsed both data, and the result is a new chair. So it's a chair that is a mixing of the original chair with the soundscape, and then it's 3D printed. So this was 2011, and it was apparently the first time that a designer, an architect, combined it, like music or sounds with a design project. And so why I'm the blog generation? Because once I did this project, I took amazing pictures, I wrote a good text, a release, I made a video, and then uploaded in many of the main blogs of that time. And it was a huge success. So I remember the chair being published like every day by a different blog. And then a couple of months after, the regular press media, like magazines and so on, started to publish in printed version. And then after the curators came and then invited me for the exhibitions. So I don't come from a rich family. I have no architects or designers in my family, and I'm the first creative generation in my family. And you know, this is rare in Brazil. I mean, if you come from a rich family, it's gonna be much easier. It's not my case, but it was easier because I'm the blog generation. So I didn't have to come from a rich family, or I didn't have to know people from the regular press or curators and so on. I had to come with I think a good project, an intriguing project. And I did good pictures, I did a good video, and I traveled to 22 countries with this chair, literally carrying this chair. And I was invited to come from Thailand to Beirut, from Russia to China to Europe for this chair. So how it began, I think, I mean, of course, when we want to work with interactive technology, now it's easier because now people understand more. But I think it's spending time in your very first, the project that you feel that shows who you are. And then this is something I always say to my students. I mean, it's really important to make incredible drawings, to make great pictures once the project's ready, write a good text, and deliver it to the blogs. And for sure, at some point, some blog is gonna like it, it's gonna publish, and then someone is gonna see it. So I think for me, this is a little bit how it started. Another example of this time, in 2012, I did an office space. I designed an office space, a tiny one, 40 square meters, super low budget, but it was the first time I used sensors in the space to collect how they were behaving, and then it reacted in an interactive wall that I designed. It was very low budget, very cute project, super small. And it was published in many blogs, and that's how Google found me. So Google was searching for an architect to develop their huge headquarters in Brazil for almost 5,000 people. And I end up being hired by Google to develop their headquarters. So I think it's again, how you present yourself and how you investigate. So I think it's a lot about research. We should never, ever stop researching. Architecture is about research, right? I think it's a daily research. It's amazing that you guys have this privilege of being in one of the best architectural schools on the planet. How much material you have to research, and the laboratories and the digital fabrication. I know the Fab Lab from IAAC is one of the most incredible projects. So let's take the best of it, of all of these privileges, right?
Thank you. I think we have one maybe last question from Gerald. You need to unmute yourself.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, sure. A bit. Maybe you need to get a bit closer to the microphone.
Okay, so thank you, Guto, for sharing. I come from Peru, so I can relate with many things that are happening in Brazil. Also, I am a physicist, so my question will be on that sense. You mentioned that you use a lot of parametric design. there's also robotics, there's also electronics, there's also apps. So could you share a little more of how do you work with your probably interdisciplinary team? Do you work with a stable team of engineers, mathematicians probably, or it's on or is it more on demand of the project? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gerald. I love Peru. I've been visiting Lima and the Fab Labs in Lima. There's an incredible maker movement and Fab Lab movement happening in Peru. And I think your country is one of the most fascinated countries I've ever visited. I love it. So yeah, the team, most of the team are architects. I would say that past year, we had a bigger studio with fixed people working for us. And now we are rethinking how to have the studio working. So I got a smaller team. It's, I think, 5 people now. That is fixed people. Most of them are architects. But since a couple of years ago, we understood how amazing it is when you have a more multidisciplinary team, even to develop architectural projects. So we have a graphic designer, product designer, and more recently, the computer scientist and the 2 programmers that I told you. So it's still not a big number of people, but they are fixed here. So even when we don't have a project related to digital fabrication or interaction design, they are always working in some idea. So there is always, this environment of ideas. So now, if you could come to my studio downstairs, we have a couple of rooms that I asked everybody to work in the 2nd floor, and then we left the ground floor to exhibit these hardwares that we've been developing in the past years. So it was a way of inviting new clients, inviting companies and brands to come, and then I can show to them how the heartbeats work, how the sensors, the mind wave sensors work, how we've been working with many of this hardware. And this is happening only because it's a multidisciplinary team. So we have different creative directors at the studio as well. So I'm the leader. So when a project comes, most of the time I gather the team, I direct an idea or a vision or a concept. It's as shared as possible, and then the team develop. But what has been amazing in the past years that I want to relate is that once you don't have only architects, we know this, right? We always know that multidisciplinaries, it works better, it's nice, and so on and so on. But when you find ways of applying it in your daily studio life, it changes completely. Other thing that has changing a lot the landscape ideas of the studio is that we decided to have a studio that not only white people, so we have people from different cultural backgrounds, when possible, immigrants, queer people, trans people. So if we want to talk about the future in the studio, I mean, we would not be talking about the future if we had only cisgender white people working in the studio. So it changed a lot the quality of the project, the quality of the discussion, to have a more diversity environment. So to me, it's about multidisciplinarity and diversity. So when you guys are founding your studio and inviting friends to work with, make sure you're not working only with white people. Make sure you're not working only with cisgender people. I mean, where are the trans architects? Where are the other? Where is the diversity in the architecture studio? I'm not sure how is the situation there, but in Brazil, it's very bad. I mean, every studio I visit, I get very bored and very frustrated when I see everybody looking the same.
Thank you very much, Guto. And we have one last question from Damani. I don't know if you are connected and would like to share it here on camera. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. My question is really quick. I really love the presentation, and I would like to know how it was, especially about one project that was about an urban, like a monument for the city and a public project. And now I'm Brazilian too, and my last time working was with Guto, and now I'm having the opportunity to work here in Europe. And for me, I really think that is surprising me is the difference about budget, even about public or private projects, and how big budgets they have for the project, and especially for a public project. I wanted to know how it was like to assemble technology in a public, especially in a public project, and and if you think, Guto, how is going to make viable, how to make it possible for like in a public administration environment to propose, and not just propose, but to make it possible to make like projects that unifies technology and architecture, even when the budget is really tight.
Yes, nice to see you, Damani. Very excited to see you. I hope everything is well with you. So Damani was working with us last year or maybe longer. So Damani, I think the business model that we are fighting to make it happen, I think it's the same everywhere. When you are in public administration or when you're working in the public spaces, you must have the support of the public sphere, right? The municipality and so on. But most of the time, they don't have the money to invest in these interactive installations or in a high quality urban furniture. And in Brazil, especially, because most of the money must go to the other basic things in the city. So I think the formula that works the better is having the support of the municipality, of the public spheres, and getting the money from private clients. So getting the money from the brands. So I think the magic is when you can combine both of the universes, is how you can find ways of convincing and showing to the brands that instead of spending so much advertisement in magazines, in TVs, or in other ways, when they do something in the public sphere, when they do something in the street, they can get a lot of publicity. They can get a lot of organic media. They can get a lot of visualizations. They can get a lot of knowledge. People know the brands when they are in the street. So at least for me in São Paulo, in Brazil, this is how I'm trying to convince and trying to find the money from these big tech companies, from the big brands, and then having the support of the municipalities.
Thank you very much. Really good.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your questions. It's lovely to see such a rich conversation happening here, and I think it's been as equally interesting as the wall talk. Thank you very much, Guto, for joining us today, for bringing such a nice emotions late in the evening after, I guess, a hard day of work for all of you here, and also in a way in the middle of the day for you there in Brazil. So thank you all for joining, and hope to see you soon at the upcoming IAAC lectures. Talk soon. Have a nice evening. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Ciao, ciao. Thank you.